This is the review for the QUADS 3 test from the notes. So this is the review part of the notes for the QUADS 3 test. Let's look at number 1. My instruction says find the discriminant of the following equations, then state the number and type of solutions each equation has. So remember, if we want to find the discriminant, that's where we're going to use that equation b squared minus 4ac. It's what's under the radical of the square root, which is what you learned today in the quadratic formula. So we're using that b squared minus 4ac. So notice if I'm going to use that, this has to be in standard form. Well, this one's not. I need to add the 8 to this side because I want it to be equal to 0. So I'm going to have 2x squared plus 3x and then plus 4 equals 0. After I get that, then I'm going to plug those numbers into the quadratic formula. You want to identify your a, your b, and your c. So I'm going to plug in, I've got 3 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is 4. That's actually, you're not dealing with the 0, we're just looking at that discriminant, which is just those numbers. Once I get that, I plug that in my calculator, so I'm going to do open parentheses, 3 closed, squared, minus 4, open parentheses 2, closed, open parentheses 4, closed, enter, and you're going to get negative 23. So that becomes my discriminant. Then from there I want to state the number and type of solution. So my number is going to be 2 because it's a negative, and then the type is going to be non-real or imaginary. The other thing you need to know is irrational. Irrational means that it's not real. This will right here, that word, you need to know it right there. So non-real or irrational, that's number 1. Number 2, so again, I want this in standard form. I need to add the 3 over to the other side. So I'm going to add this 3 to this side right here. So I have negative 3x squared plus 12 equals 0. Once I do that, identify your letters, your A, B, and C. Notice here I do not have a B, so I have an A and I have a C. So B is going to be 0, so B equals 0 because it's not present. So I'm going to have 0 squared minus 4 times A, which is negative 3, times C, which is 12. Plug that in your calculator, so open parentheses 0, close, squared, minus 4 times negative 3 times 12, enter, and you're going to get 144 as your discriminant, which means your type of solutions and numbers, so you've got 2 real, or again, so if this is irrational, this one is going to be rational. Okay. So the other type that we haven't talked about on this one is if you get a discriminant of 0. So remember, if you get a discriminant of 0, that's going to be 1 real solution, okay, or rational solution. So if the discriminant here is 0, discriminant is 0, then you've got 1 real solution. So just keep that in mind as you are working through this and you see it come up on the test. So here, on these reviews, I'm going to match the type of solutions and discriminant to each of the following graphs. So to make this easy for us in seeing it, I'm going to label this A, B, C, D, E, and then A, B, C. Okay. So here we go. This graph right here, I'm crossing my x-axis at 2 points, which means I've got one thing, I have 2 real solutions. I know I'm A, and let's change this to 1, 2, 3 so that you don't get confused with which A. So I've got 2 real solutions. I'm also going to have a positive discriminant, so this is going to be A and 3. So we've got those right there. Alright. Then, this one right here doesn't cross my x-axis at all. Well, we've really only been labeling it as non-real or imaginary, but remember there's other names to it as well. So this is going to be a B because it can be too non-real. It could also be known as too complex. And then y'all's is, you like to say, no solution, so just remember that no real solution. Which means I have a discriminant that is negative, because if it's negative, that's what that gives me. So I hope you can guess based off of that what this last one is. Notice it's only touching it one time, so you only have one solution, which is pretty noticeable. And then that means my discriminant is actually a 0. Okay, make sure you study this one. Make sure you know how these look, what they go with, the types that go together, the discriminant, and the type of solutions. Alright, next one. This is simplifying the following radicals. This is what we did right before I left. So here we go. We want to simplify these radicals. Again, go from the inside, work your way out. So right here, I've got a -3 squared. Well, that's saying the same thing as the square root of -9. Remember, if you type in your calculator, open parentheses, -3, close, and square it, you're going to get a +9. And then I still have this negative right here. Well, we know what the square root of 9 is. It is 3. And then remember, this is like saying the square root of -1 times the square root of 9. So I have a 3i as my answer. Alright, number 7. You've got 2 square root of -75. Well, okay, again, let's focus on the inside first. So this is like saying the square root of -1. And the square root of 75. I want to come over here and find those factors of 75. Look, remember I'm looking for that biggest perfect square, so I have 1 and 75. And I just go down to my factors, so 3, 25, 5, and 15. And you can keep going, but if you notice right here, that is my largest perfect square of 25. So this is like saying the square root of -1, square root of 3, and square root of 25. Okay, I'm going to circle this 2. I'm going to bring this down. So 2 times whatever I get, because that 2 is next to my radical. Well, the square root of 25 is 5. And then remember, this is I, square root of 3. So then finally, I'm going to do 2 times 5, which is 10. I, square root of 3. And that is my answer. Again, you need to make sure you know how to do these. These are going to show up on your test as well. Number 8. Number 8's multiple choice. It says, how can you rewrite the expression 8 minus 5i squared in the form of a plus bi? So this is how we always want to write complex numbers like this. Well, remember, this isn't like saying square your 8, square your 25. This is actually going into multiplying this out. So this is saying 8 minus 5i times 8 minus 5i. I'm going to do 8 times 8, which is 64. And then 8 times 5, -5i, which is -40i. Again, -5i times 8, which is -40i. And then -5i times -5i, which is a positive 25i squared. Okay. Alright, so now the next thing I want to do is combine like terms, and remember this I squared, so I squared equals -1. So this is like saying 64, well, -40 and -40 gives me -80i, plus 25 times -1, right there. Well, then I need to combine these two numbers here. So I know I've got this, which I can automatically mark off that and that one, because I'm going to have a -80i, and then I have 64. Well, this becomes -25 minus 80i. Well, 64 minus 25 gives me 39 minus 80i, and the only one that matches that is letter B. Please do not forget that I squared equals -1. You need to remember that. Alright, number 9. Number 9 says, find a from ax squared minus 4x plus 6 when the discriminant is 112. So again, we're using that equation of b squared minus 4ac. So again, here I've got A, B, C. And I know this is equal to 112 because it says my discriminant is 112. So B is negative 4 squared minus 4, A is A, and then C is 6 equals 112. And then I'm just going to simplify this down for a minute. So I have negative 4 squared, which is 16, minus, well, 4 times 6 is 24, A equals 112. I want to move this 16 to the other side because I'm trying to solve right here for A. So I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. This goes back to simple algebraic work. So I have 112 minus 16, which is 96, and that equals negative 24A. And then I want to divide by negative 24 because 24 is multiplying times A. Divide by negative 24, so I have A equals negative 4 as my answer. Now remember, if you're solving for B, you're going to get 2 answers. Okay, because you have to do the plus or minus with that square root. So plus or minus gives you those 2 answers. So remember that with the B. Alright, final question that we're going to do on this is completing the square. Remember, you're also going to have quadratic formula, which is what we covered today. If you have questions, just email me. But this one right here, you've got to solve by completing the square. Alright, so this right here is solving by completing the square. I, again, am going to get the constants on one and the variables on the other. Well, right now it's not like that, so I need to move things around. So I'm going to add 12x, add 12x. So I have 6x squared plus 12x minus 48 equals 0. If you wanted to, you could have just subtracted the 6x squared. That's fine. I just like to get one on one side and one on the other. It doesn't matter which way. It should get you the same answer. Again, I'm going to add 48 because you need constants on one, variables on the other. So 6x squared plus 12x equals 48. After I do this, I want that leading coefficient to be 1, so I'm going to divide this by 6, and this by 6. So I have x squared plus 2x equals 48 divided by 6, which is 8. Okay, I didn't leave my space like I normally do, but it doesn't matter. We can come back and do it. I'm going to have x squared plus 2x, and then plus my b, which is 2, divided by 2 squared equals 8. I need to add that because whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other to keep it balanced. And then I have this simplified down to x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 8 plus 1. After that, I've got this comes a factor of x plus 1 squared. Remember, you put the single x and then half, so divide this by 2 to put that there, right there. Okay, equals 8 plus 1, which is 9. So then I'm going to solve by taking the square root of both sides, but when I take the square root, I have to do plus or minus. So I have x plus 1 equals plus or minus square root of 9, which we know is 3. If that had not been able to simplify, you would have just left it as the square root or simplify the radical as far as it can go. Make sure you take out the I as well. So here I'm going to subtract 1. So this is like saying x equals negative 1 plus 3 and x equals negative 1 minus 3. Because remember, this right here causes it to split. So x equals, well, negative 1 plus 3, that means x equals 2, and negative 1 minus 3 means x equals negative 4. So 2 and negative 4 are my answers. Okay, that's the end of the review. Go back and rewatch it if you need to. If you have any questions, just let me know. Email me for whatever help you need.